Clara was only 6 years old when life taught her that some wounds never bleed on the outside. She remembered her mother's funeral more by the silence than the sobs. Everyone wore white, as tradition demanded, but even at that young age, she could sense the dull weight pressing down on every heart present. Her mother, soft-spoken and warm like the morning sun, was now buried in a wooden box beneath the red earth of their village. Clara held her father's hand tightly that day, the only hand she had left in the world. She believed that hand would never let her go. But grief has a strange way of changing people. Her father, once cheerful and filled with stories, slowly became a ghost in his own home. He stopped singing, stopped smiling, stopped noticing Clara's growing sadness. He would return from the farm late, eat in silence, and sleep without a word. The once joyful evenings filled with laughter and moonlight stories vanished like smoke. It wasn't long before he said the words Clara feared the most. He was going to remarry. She didn't understand what it meant at first, not truly. But the day Madame Rolake stepped into their compound with her daughter, Titi, everything became painfully clear. Rolake was not her mother, not even close. She was tall, cold, and carried herself like royalty, even though her heart was nothing but stone. Titi, on the other hand, had the arrogance of a girl raised to believe the world owed her kindness. She was a year older than Clara, but spoke to her like a servant. From the first moment, Clara saw the way her father's eyes lit up around Rolake, desperate to rebuild a family. But what he built instead was a prison for his only child. The very next morning after they arrived, Clara's world shifted. Rolake handed her a list of chores: sweep the compound, fetch water, wash dishes, prepare hot water, clean the latrine. Clara blinked, unsure if she was hearing correctly. She was just a child. She had never done these things alone before. But when she hesitated, Rolake's hand slapped across her cheek, hard and sudden. "Lazy girl," she barked. "You want to grow up and become useless like your mother?" That was the first of many times Clara would hear those words, each time more painful than the last. Days turned into weeks. Clara was now responsible for almost every duty in the house, while Titi lounged around doing nothing. Titi wore fine clothes, had ribbons in her hair, and received money for snacks in school. Clara wore old hand-me-downs, sandals with broken straps, and had to make her pencils last months. If she misplaced anything, Rolake would beat her, accusing her of stealing or witchcraft. She slept on a mat in the corner of the kitchen while Titi had her own bed with a net and a new mattress. On cold nights, Clara used old clothes as a blanket. The worst part wasn't even the chores or the hunger. It was how invisible she became in her father's eyes. Whenever he returned from work and Clara tried to speak, Rolake would cut in, complaining that she was lazy, disrespectful, or wicked. And her father believed her. Every time, he never asked Clara for her side. He would look at her with disappointment, as if the sight of her alone brought shame. One day, Clara came home from school with a prize, a small certificate for best in class. She was so proud. She ran home barefoot, holding the paper tightly, her heart beating fast with hope. Maybe, just maybe, her father would be proud of her. She handed him the certificate, smiling. He barely glanced at it before Rolake snatched it away. "This one? With all the noise she makes about being smart? Let her smartness cook food or pay rent." The certificate was thrown into the fire that night, while Clara watched helplessly, her eyes wide with disbelief, her lips trembling. She cried herself to sleep on her thin mat, holding the memory of that certificate in her chest like a photograph that could never be burned. As Clara grew older, her suffering only deepened. At 10, she was already cooking for 5 people, carrying heavy buckets of water, and tending the garden before school. She often went to class late, smelling of smoke and palm oil, with fingers rough and cracked. The teachers sometimes noticed, but no one said anything. In the village, girls like Clara were expected to suffer quietly. Titi began to mock her more openly, especially in public. "You see her? Our housemaid that pretends to be my sister," she would say with a cruel laugh. Other children began to call Clara Omo Iron, the servant's child. It stuck like glue. Clara could no longer play during recess. She sat under the mango tree, drawing patterns in the sand with a stick, pretending it was a pen she would one day use to sign her freedom. By the time Clara was 13, she had mastered the art of silence. She could move through the house like a ghost, cleaning, washing, cooking, without a single word. But her silence did not protect her. Rolake would always find a reason to hurt her. One morning, Clara mistakenly added too much salt to the stew. Rolake grabbed her by the ear and dragged her across the compound, beating her with a mop stick in front of the neighbors. No one intervened. No one ever did. Titi watched from the balcony, eating fried plantain, smirking. There were nights Clara would sit by the back of the house, looking at the stars, whispering questions to a god she wasn't sure was listening. "Did you forget me? Am I invisible even to you?" Yet, somehow, she kept her heart soft. She still helped the blind woman who lived by the roadside. She still shared her Gary with the beggar children on the way from school. She still smiled at the old farmer who gave her a ripe pawpaw once. In the middle of all her pain, Clara still chose kindness. Not because the world had been kind to her, but because she refused to let it change who she was. By the time Clara turned 15, her hands had become rougher than most grown women. The skin on her palms bore scars from washing, scrubbing, and carrying things no child should have to carry. The bones in her back ached each night from bending over charcoal stoves, grinding pepper, and sweeping compound dust that never seemed to disappear. Yet, somehow, the ache in her bones was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She no longer expected her father to notice her. He had become a shadow. He ate his meals in silence and left before dawn. If he ever did look at her, it was always with mild annoyance or indifference. He never asked why her school shoes had holes, never noticed when she limped after a beating, never questioned why his daughter, who once used to read stories to him, now barely spoke. Rolake had completely turned him against her with lies and manipulation, calling her lazy, wayward, and cursed. And he, broken by his own regrets, simply accepted it. At school, things were no better. Titi had made sure everyone knew Clara was the girl from that house. She spread cruel rumors that Clara was possessed, that she stole money, that she was adopted from a shrine. And because Clara never spoke back, people believed them. She had no close friends. No one wanted to sit beside her, not even during lunch. Some teachers treated her coldly, asking her to kneel for no reason or skipping her when they shared classroom rewards. Clara began to think that maybe there was something truly wrong with her. Still, she kept going. She would wake up before everyone, light the fire, heat water, wash the dishes, fetch water from the well, and iron Titi's uniform before preparing her own. Most mornings, she skipped breakfast just to make it to school on time. And when she returned, there was always a mountain of chores waiting. Sometimes she studied by candlelight with one eye open, her body trembling with exhaustion, her notebook resting on her knees, while she sat on the bare kitchen floor. One particular day, Clara had just finished a full day at school followed by hawking pure water in the sun. Her sandals had broken, and she walked barefoot on the hot tar. Her feet were blistered, and her stomach ached from hunger. She passed a narrow path near the main road and saw an elderly man struggling to carry a sack of yams. Without thinking, she ran up to him. "Let me help you, sir," she said, already lifting the sack from his frail shoulders. The man, surprised, looked at her with tired eyes. "You no even ask who I be before you help?" Clara shook her head gently. "You're tired, sir. That's enough." She helped him all the way to his gate, a small compound with peeling paint and a wooden door. He thanked her quietly and handed her 200 naira, but she refused. "No, sir. It's okay," she smiled. "Take it," he insisted, but Clara stepped back with a quiet nod and walked away. That simple moment would change her life, though Clara didn't know it yet. What she didn't realize was that the old man was not just anyone. His name was Baba Aliyemi, a retired business magnate known only to a few in that neighborhood. He had been sick and intentionally left the house that day to test the nature of people. Most ignored him. Clara, who had nothing, gave him everything. Back at home that evening, Rolake was furious. Titi had told her that Clara was seen selling water and talking to an old man like a prostitute. Rolake dragged Clara into the house by her ear, shouting and slapping her with a kitchen towel soaked in palm oil. So now you sell yourself to old men? A shawo, just like your mother. Clara collapsed in the corner of the room, holding her face, her breath caught between sobs. But she didn't fight back. She never did. She had learned to swallow her pain in silence like medicine. That night, with her face swollen and her eyes raw from tears, Clara wrote a letter to herself. She wrote, "One day I will be free. One day I will matter. One day I will be loved for who I am." She folded it and hid it beneath the floorboard beside her mat. Weeks passed. Clara forgot about the old man. Life continued, hard and unforgiving, until one morning a black stepped out, followed by a younger assistant. They asked for Clara. Rolake, thinking it was bad news or debt collectors, called her out sharply. Clara came out, barefoot, wearing her faded green wrapper. The tall man smiled warmly. "You don't recognize me?" he asked. She shook her head, nervous. "I'm the old man you helped on the road. My name is Aliyemi, and I owe you more than you know." Before Clara could reply, Rolake had stepped forward, putting on the most sugary smile she had ever faked. "Ah, Baba, thank you all. Clara is our daughter. We raise her well. Whatever you want to give her, just pass it through me. We are one family." Aliyemi looked at her, and then looked at Clara's bare feet, her sunken cheeks, the silent fear in her eyes. "She doesn't look like someone raised in love," he said flatly. Rolake tried to laugh, but it caught in her throat. "I came here to thank her personally, and to offer her something she never had, an opportunity." Rolake jumped in again. She's still under my KRO. If it's a sponsorship or job, it has to go through me." "I'm not asking for permission," Aliyemi interrupted. "I'm telling you, Clara will come with me. Today." Rolake protested. Titi cried out, demanding to know why it wasn't her. Her father came out of the house, confused and ashamed, mumbling something about not knowing the full story. But for once, none of it mattered. Clara was given a choice, and for the first time in her life, she chose herself. After Clara left, the house grew cold, not in temperature, but in spirit. Rolake no longer had a punching bag for her frustrations, and Titi, now 16, had lost the one person who quietly bore the weight of her entitlement. At first, Rolake pretended everything was fine. She told neighbors that Clara had run off with a sugar daddy. She laughed too loudly at the market, claiming that some girls were simply born to be useless. But behind her walls, things had started to fall apart. Without Clara, the house was dirty, disorganized, and filled with complaints. Titi, who had never lifted a broom, now had to cook her own meals and wash her own clothes. The bathroom stank. Dishes piled up. Flies danced over leftover EBA. Rolake barked orders, but Titi never listened. "I'm not Clara," she would say, rolling her eyes. "You better find another slave." Money became tighter. Clara's odd jobs, cleaning, hawking, fetching water for others, had secretly brought in small amounts that helped the house. Now it was just silence and bills. Her father, realizing too late what he'd allowed, sank into depression. He drank more and worked less, disappearing for days. Rolake began selling off things in the house just to keep up appearances. First a radio, then the TV, then even Clara's old books. Meanwhile, Clara's life was changing. Aliyemi took her under his wing like a daughter he never had. He cleaned her wounds, not the ones on her skin, but the deeper ones, the broken self-esteem, the crushed dreams, the fear of speaking up. He sent her to a private school, bought her clothes, and told her every day, "You matter. You're light." Clara bloomed.